Hello and welcome to the Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers next installment of Playing with Myself. Hi, I am Matt, and today we're going to be taking a look at a follow-on to my Starfield mod where we are using unique storage containers to create a small-scale production chain. And some of the good, bad, and ugly of modding that I'm learning as a first-time modder. This diagram is the model of the production flow change using the unique storage containers that I'm going to show how I built on my main outpost. You can see you have the Starship landing location. The transfer case is basically the single entry point for resources. And then you have your different sort of clusters of unique storage in the three different classes, solid, liquid, and gas, followed by your tier 1 assemblers, right? And warehouses to store what they put out, followed by the tier 2, the tier 3. So this is basically, all very storage. If you wanted a large scale production, you could scale this out by using different sized warehouses and stuff like that. But this is kind of what we're going to be building today. So this is that diagram built out. At least this is the storage component. In the highlighted area, you have your ring of solid, liquid, and gas storage, unique storage containers, as well as the transfer case, with the transfer case sort of being the central hub. You'll also note that in this sort of wall of storage, you'll see instances where you have a liquid and a solid that are stacked on each other, whereas you have some of the liquid are stored by themselves. When you have a stack, when I did this mod, I was going through and looking at the organic resources, and it was interesting that Starfield actually just considers them or puts them all in the same storage category, but there really were liquid and solid organic resources. So you might have something like a lubricant that has, something from hide or bone, but it also has it from like sap. And so when I did this mod, I broke out the liquid organic resources and actually designated them with keywords as a liquid resource. And so in those cases, we've got two kinds of organic resource. And so I paired those in the stacking, and also when I go through the manufacturing process, I've had to link both the solid and the liquid versions of those organic resources to the assembly buildings. And so once you've placed all the unique storage containers, you have to link them to the transfer case. So this image here is showing kind of an overview image. I think it was standing on my the landing pad for the ship, looking down in the outpost view mode, and you can see I've got these green links running from the transfer case to all of these different storage units. I was really worried that I was going to click on one and it go up, you've hit your limit, but it seems that it was able to connect all of them. So this is kind of what that first set will look like, right? So this is your transfer case as the resource entry point, and your unique storage containers of all three classes kind of laid out in whatever pattern you would like to have, but they're all connected at this point. The next step in the process is to build and place your tier 1 assembly buildings, and then a warehouse storage for each one of those. And then you go through and link all of the required resources for the tier 1 buildings, which for almost all of them, it's going to be your raw resources. I think there are one or two where you actually have to map a tier 1 warehouse to a tier 1 assembly, because it actually uses one of the manufactured parts. So this is kind of you've got your storage down. Now this is your first tier of manufacturing capability and storage for those manufactured parts. Of course, the next step is to connect the tier 2 assembly buildings, and it's basically the same process. At least in my case, I used small warehouses. You could use larger ones, but because this is a small scale production, the small warehouses were more than enough storage for me for this process. Again, you have to then link these, and this tier 2 is definitely a combination of raw resources and tier 1 manufactured components. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to change gears a little bit before we move on with the build out to talk about power. Power for these assembly buildings and methods you can use to better manage your production assembly chain, right? So I think if you just build these buildings and you build enough power resources on your base, they will just kind of suck up the ambient power. I'm not sure how it works. It's sci-fi, but that's great if you want your stuff running all of the time. But there might be a case where you want to stop the production chain, or you want to stop parts of the production chain. Maybe you've got a goal, you're trying to get a particular tier 3 piece built, but a resource that is used to build that is used to build other things. And so you may want to be able to pause some of your manufacturing chain. And so using power switches is the way that, at least that I've used, to have greater control over the production chain. And so we're going to talk about that for a second here, and a couple different methods you can use for either sort of more blunt control or more scalpel control. So in this image, what you see, you have the green lines that represent the connections, but you also see a series of yellow lines. Those yellow lines are wired power connections. And so you'll see them running from a series of wind turbines and then leading down to sort of a central point. And then you see a bunch of yellow arrow lines heading out to that first tier of assembly buildings. And so what that represents is those power is flowing into a single switch. And then that one switch is connected to all of those tier 1 assemblies. What happens though when you do this is once you assign a switch to a building, that building automatically powers down unless it has the amount of power it needs fed to it. So it's kind of a decision. You can just have everything running on the sort of ambient wireless power distribution in Starfield. Or if you want greater control and you do add a switch, then you do have to link a level of power to power that particular building. So in this particular case, I added up, I think it's like 5 or 6 power per tier 1 assembly. And then I just kind of did some math, threw down some of those wind turbines. And then once I had the total amount I needed, linked them to that switch. So this would allow you to turn on and off all of these assemblers at one time. So in general, I just leave the tier 1 assemblers on all the time, but I just wanted to demonstrate sort of the two different methods. So this is one switch to multiple assembly buildings, and we're going to now take a look at using individual switches for each of the assembly buildings to give you greater control of your production flow. So for the tier 2 and the tier 3 assembly buildings, I added a switch at each of the assembly buildings and then had to tie in the appropriate amount of power to each one of those switches. Again, that gives you an option if you want to do this for greater control to turn on and off maybe certain production processes that are using a lot of resources. So here is that sort of base manufacturing chain layout again, incorporating the power switches, right? For the tier 1, you have a single switch for multiple buildings, and on tier 2 and tier 3, you have the individual switches. So this is kind of the final layout if you wanted to incorporate power and switch management for your assembly line. So just the last step there is to build your tier 3 manufacturing, provide them with warehouse storage. In this case, I linked them to individual switches, ran power to them, and then created all of the needed linkages from raw resources, tier 1 and tier 2 assembly buildings so that they would have everything linked to them. And so this is just sort of a view from above showing the somewhat crazy and intricate web of both resource links and power links for the entire assembly system. So let's go and maybe take a ground view of this monstrosity. Oh, hi, Andresia. Sorry, you mind if I get by you on these stairs? So just taking a ground look at the unique storage boxes. Here you can see some of the examples of the solid and the liquid stacked on top of each other. It's also why I have these small desks placed everywhere because these are a little bit raised, but for some of the others, it's the only way that I can manually interact with the top layer. It'd be nice if Starfield, I'm sure there's a mod out there, but had some sort of like scaffolding. But so I have this little row of tables that make me tall enough that I can actually interact manually with the upper level storage boxes. Right, and this is all unique storage and for every different kind of solid, gas, and liquid resource. Fairly alphabetical order. It's not perfect, but I tried just in case I wanted to go pull something out manual for some reason that it would be a little bit easier to find. I think maybe there was a way to match this up with a sign modification. That would be pretty cool. But that's basically the layout. So here we can see the tier 1 assemblers or fabricators. You can take a look and see what they're building, right? So this one's currently building the isotopic coolant. And this is its linked warehouse for the output. And we just kind of go down the line here. And I think there's 11 of them in total. On each one, here's our power switch. This is that one that I mentioned earlier that is connecting power to all of these tier 1 fabricator assembly buildings. And you can see that some of them already are full from previous tests and previous manufacturing. All right, and now we move on to our tier 2. So now we have one with an individual power switch that is connected to the tier 2 fabricator. That again allows you to turn off individual fabricators so that, let's say you wanted to create these, but you didn't want anyone using up all the solvent, since it seems like it's a rare thing for me. You might turn off something else that's using solvent if you wanted to get those nanofibers produced. So again, the same thing. Lay them all out. I think there's 10 or 11 of them as well. And each one has a small warehouse, because again, this is small batch production. If you wanted to make this a larger batch, you could do multiple fabricators for a particular thing. You could have larger warehouses. And we'll just sneak around here. And now we'll take a look at the tier 3 assembly fabricator building. Same thing, you have an individual switch. Each one has a different component that it's manufacturing. And very similar, right? You just have a series of the fabricator assembles the small warehouses, and each one with its own unique power switch. All right, now we're going to take a look at how this process works. So here's our transfer container. This is the single entry point for our resources. Because we're at a base with a landing pad, we have access to both our inventory and the ship's inventory. And so we can take a look and see what's in there, and we can begin moving resources from the ship's inventory or our inventory into the transfer container. So that's what we're going to see now. So now that we've fed all of the resources into the transfer container, we pull back out, we take a look, and so the transfer container is mostly empty, but not completely empty. So my assumption when I was doing this is that, one, I put something in there like the Earl Grey tea that doesn't go in there. Also aluminum, there's some in there. It's probably because I've got enough of it that's already filled the individual box. So let's go take a look at those boxes. So as we're looking through the boxes, we can see that the resources have been moved from the transfer container. So here's aluminum, 150 of 150, can't store anymore. As we go through, we can see the different colors showing that individual boxes that were empty are now showing that they have some percentage either full or even if there's only one. But all of the materials have flowed from the transfer container and into the storage boxes. And so next we're going to go ahead and take a look. In theory, those resources should be flowing into the fabricator assembly. And so making things like isotopic coolant. I think this one was already full. We have lots of mag pressure tanks. But they are feeding this supply chain. So this is taking a look at that tier 1 manufactured goods. And so some of the reason there might not be that many resources in some of the containers is that they're already being fed into this system. And so we'll start to check our tier 2 and see if we've actually got anything manufactured in there, this particular fabricator. You can either check at the console to see what it needs, or you can go into that sort of outpost view mode. It'll show you the resources that are needed for it. So we're sort of missing a couple here. That's either I just don't have those particular resources, or they were used for something else. So you might note a change in the daytime here in this part of the video, and it's because this is one of the things that I discovered when doing the mod. I was able to get stuff into the tier 1, but for some reason the tier 2 and the tier 3 assemblers, fabricators, were not recognizing the raw resources. So I had to go back and double check and make sure that all the appropriate keywords had been added. And what the big one was for the organic resources. I had to go through each one of the organic resources types and basically assign it keywords saying, hey, you're a liquid organic, or hey, you're a solid organic. And it was the same with some of the inorganic resources that I went back and checked and had not assigned the appropriate keyword saying, hey, silver, you're actually silver. Once that was done, the stuff began flowing through to the tier 2 and the tier 3 fabricators like I thought they would. Sometimes it's hard to know whether you're seeing something in one of the tier 1 or tier 2, or if it's empty, whether you just don't have the resource or whether that resource has been consumed. As you can see here, we've got production, not of every single thing, but there are some of these tier 3 are being produced. So it's probably a combination of, so for this test, I didn't go out and make sure that I had every single resource possible. I just dumped everything that I currently had in my Starship, and I think my personal inventory, into these initial transfer, into the transfer case. So there's some stuff that even though I've got all these connected, they just don't have it, right? So in this particular case, I just did not have the materials for the nuclear fuel rods. But you could see that all of the primary stuff for this particular thing is connected. Just sometimes you don't have the resources yet, but it's a good way to find out what you either need to look for, or maybe if you need to turn off some of those switches so that you're not burning up a particular resource you need for something else. Or if you're like me, and I shamelessly go and buy resources from the different vendors, especially if they're a little bit harder to find when I'm out and about. This is a good way to see exactly what you need and what maybe you don't need. It's definitely anything you have in your transfer container that's kind of piling up, and whether you want to leave it in there or whether you want to keep or create like a bulk overflow container or something nearby to hold stuff that maybe you have a little too much of. And again, I just want to note that this is all done with really without this particular base. I don't really show it has the maximum number of landing pads. I'm actually thinking of removing them and replacing them with more HAB type features, because they really don't support this in any way, and they would really kind of like try to connect like an iron shipment to the transfer case. It would just go back to that initial video where basically the transfer case would just fill up with iron. But instead, this is definitely more of niche construction, where you're bringing in stuff that you've bought, that you found, and not so much from just pumping in mass deliveries of stuff. Well, that's the process in a nutshell. I hope that folks get a chance to get out there and mess with it, and get to maybe make their own alterations to it. But otherwise, have a good time. So I wanted to cover a couple issues that I ran into while doing this mod. The first one was really unfortunate because I had no plans to replicate the unique storage containers at the medium and the large level, because my concept was that you could put resources into the transfer container, build a link from the transfer container to let's say a unique container with iron. And then I could take that unique container and I could connect it to a large container, right? Just generic, unmodified. And in theory, the idea would be that, only iron would flow from the connection to the transfer case to the unique iron storage box. And then from the iron storage box, the only thing that would flow into this larger overfill for commonly used items like iron, copper, cobalt, titanium, aluminum. And so I could have kind of overflow storage and then connect that overflow storage for a few of the highly used resources into the production chain. Unfortunately, the way that the transfer container sees it is it sees it as a direct path. And so the first time when I was doing this, you noticed the lighting change, right? I had to take a couple of takes because I had dumped all of the resources into the transfer container and they were all gone. And I was like, this is awesome. Then I started walking through and I found a few of the gas and a few of the water resources, liquid resources had gone into their individual containers, but all of the solid containers were empty. And I was like, where is everything? And I went back and I started looking at these overflow containers and they just had everything in them. And so I tried reversing the order. So I had an arrow going from a link going from the transfer container to the iron box and the unique box, and then from a large container to the iron box, but it just didn't change anything. It still saw it as a direct route to like path of least resistance. So eventually in the build that I showed, I don't have any of these actively connected. I broke all those connections, and I just have the small storage containers with the unique resource constraints are linked into the fabrication process. And so that, for what I'm designing, small scale, just trying to get, a few of those high-end items built, place to dump my resources and have them auto sort, it works fine. But probably for some of the more common resources, I'll probably end up having to build multiple small containers, or in the future, I may have to go and build an additional mod for the medium and the large storage containers. But that's an issue. I don't really understand why Starfield's that link connection seems to work pretty good, but this is an instance where its design just did not work for me. So the other issue I mentioned in the video was the assembly fabricator buildings not recognizing the resources. So to get the unique storage containers, that was one set of keywords. But what's interesting is that the manufacturing buildings are actually looking for a different object keyword, right? So in this particular screen, we're looking at pigment. So while I had created a keyword for the storage container to be used as what it would allow to store, that keyword itself didn't apply forward to the actual resource itself. And so I didn't realize that. So I went back in and I had to go through each of the resources, both the organic specifically and some of the organic ones as well, and add a keyword to them. So if you double click on this uncommon pigment here in the center, it will open up another window. And on that, you've got a set of keywords, and you basically just right click on it, say add. And you have to go in and tell it, hey, yeah, you're not just a organic resource, you're not just solid, but I also added the resource type solid pigment. And I actually, for this one, added resource type liquid pigment as well. That once I had done that and added those resource types to the base object resource, then the manufacturing assembly buildings would accept them and use them as part of the construction chain. So one last thing I just wanted to cover in this video, and it's because it could cause issues with folks that are using this mod. I've already had one person give me feedback that maybe this other change that I did to the game could interact with other mods that someone is running. So I expanded the carrying weight of the transfer container. I wanted to make sure that if I was offloading a lot of stuff from the Starship when I came in, that it wouldn't get hung up and bogged down in the transfer container. So I changed the carrying weight from the standard of 200 to 600. And I just wanted to show, so if folks are in there and they're having issues and you have access to the creation kit, it is super easy to change. You just search for transfer. You'll find the Outpost Transfer Container 01 object. I don't know, the file icon they have where it looks like a little filing cabinet or printer. Once you open that up, there's the actor values, and the very top one is carrying weight. And you can see in mine, I have it, because this is running off the mod, this has got a carrying weight of 600. If you think that's causing an issue with something else, you could just change that back to 200 and save it. But again, I haven't had any issues with that yet, but I am not running any other mods. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case folks do. They can see, because this is one additional change that I made to the game with this mod. All right. So in closing, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who has taken a look at the mod. It is currently up on the Bethesda Creation website. I know some folks have asked me about getting it on Nexus. I will take a look at that. But thank you for everyone who's taken a look at it, provided some feedback, let me know that there were some issues with it. I think I'm on version the third release for it because of that. But I do appreciate the interaction from the community. I hope that folks find this useful, that they can expand upon it. But I just wanted to say thanks, and until next time, I will see you all later, and just happy gaming. Bye.